So we've had a few rulings from the ASA on their changes to the codes of practice for gambling advertising not being of strong appeal to children. Would it be helpful, Sarah, this morning to talk about unpacking some of those decisions and what they mean for people that are advertising in the betting and gaming sphere?
Yep, very happy to do that. I think actually before we launch into exactly what the rulings say and what they mean, it's probably helpful to just set the scene on the rule. As of the 1st of October last year, the ASA published new rules and new guidance on the protection of children and young people from harms in respect of gambling advertising. And one of the particular changes they made was to the rule on which prohibited gambling advertising from having particular appeal to children, making that now a prohibition on gambling advertising having strong appeal to children. And essentially what that means is that anything which is, I'm using the word particular, but has that sort of strong appeal is no longer allowed within the content of gambling advertising. What's really a big thing for gambling advertisers, particularly sports betting advertisers, is that the ASA said that football is of an inherent strong appeal. So whereas gambling advertisers were using pictures of footballers or any other content, imagery, music, anything which gave kind of strong links to football, the ASA is sort of saying now that that can't be used within those adverts.
So it's actually a really big change, because although of course those in the industry are used to ASA rules, no under 25s, no particular appeal, they've been able to think about that carefully, use brand ambassadors, use celebrities, sports personalities in a range of roles, provided they're within those clear previous metrics. Now you have this strong appeal test. It's not just footballers, is it? It's an assessment of anyone you're using that falls within that strong appeal to children category.
Exactly, and the brand ambassadors point is big. These will have been deals that they've had, with often retired footballers or, other high-profile sports personalities that are now kind of being used by betting and gaming brands to advertise their stuff.
Do you think then in the new world of strong appeal and what that means and what you have to think about, that these recent 3 rulings that we've had from the ASA give greater clarity to advertisers in the sector?
Well, I certainly think the first one that we saw was the ruling against Ladbrokes, where Ladbrokes had a tweet which featured 3 Premier League players, all current Premier League players, and I think the guidance is very clear that current top flight footballers are now not okay because they are of strong appeal to children and young people. Ladbrokes argued in that actually the tweet wasn't an advert. What it was a piece of kind of branded content. There was no promotion in there. There was no reference to their products and services. It was just a kind of piece of engagement, really. However, the fact that the tweet had been promoted, the ASA said, well, no, it must be an advert. And I think, that clarifies a rule that we're all well aware of, that if you're paying for something, then, that does constitute advertising. So I think it was an expected decision. The footballers in question were certainly, within the guidelines of being high risk, and the tweet was a promoted tweet, so it was clearly advertising.
And I think the stats were interesting in that case as well, weren't they? In that Ladbrokes had relied on a lot of research in terms of who could access and see that promoted content. But actually the ASA said Twitter isn't sufficient, it's self-reliant for age verification, and that you cannot rely on that as being guaranteed that children won't be seeing it. So
yeah, and I
nothing
think
you can do there.
I think that's right, and that's a kind of important thing to reiterate, actually, that when we're talking about strong appeal, we're talking about whether the content is of strong appeal to children, and it is not allowed in gambling advertising. There is a very small exception to that, where if the content is of strong appeal and no children can see it, then that is something which the ASA says, well, actually, there has been no harm there because everyone that has seen that content is verified as over 18. But that ruling reiterates that has to be a robust verification method of the person's age, and that, you know, the kind of demographic use of self-reporting your age on Twitter doesn't cut it there.
Which is an important lesson, isn't it? I think, because there was some confusion initially as to whether that would be sufficient, and ASA have said absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
And then we moved to the second rulings then, which went in the favour of the advertisers. So Peter Crouch, who shows my age, because I would have thought inherently is of strong appeal to children, but Paddy Power had used him in a Christmas advert, and on the metrics, which they had done a lot of research to back up the data that Peter Crouch does not have strong appeal. They looked at social media following, his other endorsements, the following he had, the engagement he had, the fact he was retired from international football some 5 years prior to the advert and had only played for, I don't want to offend anyone, but lesser teams of Burnley and Stoke prior to being used in the Paddy Power advert. And as such, on the data, did not have the strong appeal, was not a current footballer, was a personality that was not deemed to have strong appeal to children, and as such the advert was permitted.
I think that's right, and you know, the guidance clearly says that retired footballers may be okay, because what we're not assessing is their popularity with children when they were a footballer. And your point about, of course, we all knew Peter Crouch, he was, you know, big player for England for a number of years, but now what under 18s know of him and find him popular enough to follow on Twitter or, you know, follow on Instagram, that kind of thing. And that is the method of assessment. Who follows him now?
So good news for Paddy Power, maybe less good news for Peter Crouch if he thinks he's still cool.
Absolutely.
Not the case.
Absolutely. And I think with some people, Micah Richards was perhaps a little bit more shocking because he is a current pundit. I think Peter Crouch is as well, but he, you know, Micah Richards is a predominant pundit on Sky Sports, and I think, you know, a lot of people thought, well, surely he is of appeal to children, but actually the data backed up the argument that his popularity now is predominantly with adults.
Yeah, which was interesting. It was interesting that he had a CBeebies appearance scheduled for after the ad, and I would have been interested to see if the ASA had changed their mind had he appeared on CBeebies prior to the ad going out, but it hadn't, and so the data backed up Sky Bet's research that he was not of strong appeal.
Yeah, I think that is a good point. It'd be interesting to see where that goes. But I think, again, it just evidenced for operators out there when they're making their assessment about who to use, they absolutely need to hold really robust data about these individuals and have done a really thorough assessment as to, on balance, as of today, who finds these people appealing.
So from what you said, operators really 3 key takeaways from the rulings and the changes: be really clear on what's a brand engagement piece and what is advertising. That is very clear as to whether or not the ASA will have jurisdiction. Data. If you're using anyone that you think may be on the cusp of strong appeal, really research and check that the stats back up the fact that they're not.
Yeah.
And footballers, current top-tier footballers, just stay away.
I think that's absolutely right on those key takeaways. So if anyone needs any help with any of those assessments, then do feel free to get in touch and we can help.